Well, if we don't have any volunteers, we can let Damola get started. So thank you, Damola, for coming. Damola is an innovator, author, journalist, songwriter, musician, engineer, entrepreneur, publisher, executive, educator, technologist, and performing artist with 25 years plus of activity in the hip hop community. He has commercialized and distributed millions of copies of multimedia products he created. These products will reach over 20,000 points of sales across 6 continents and over 30 countries. In the process, he was at several critical junctures in hip hop history. He pioneered the intersection of hip hop and comic books with the great Didi Da. He pioneered the intersection of hip hop and business with the launch of Owners Illustrated magazine. In the process, he created the trademarked term Hustlenomics. He also pioneered the coverage of an intersection of hip hop and technology. In 2004, he began introducing technology executives across several industries to hip hop audiences in Owners Illustrated. In 2005, he launched a women's edition of Owners Illustrated magazine to highlight the accomplishments of the Superwoman in business and industry. In 2007, he launched Toys Nation magazine, covering the intersection of hip hop, cars, gadgets, and video games. This led to facilitating the diversification of underserved communities into computer-related STEAM jobs. He also serves as CEO of Toys Electronics LLC, a startup at the Swartz Center for Entrepreneurship at Carnegie Mellon University. Toys Electronics was recently a semifinalist for the BNY Mellon Social Innovation Challenge, administered by Innovation Works. He has also been featured by Pittsburgh Technology Council Business as Usual series and created a top 5 solution for 2020 on Excel Impact. So Damola, I'll let you get started, and thanks for coming today.
Well, thank everyone. I feel so honored to be speaking about Superwomen during Women History Month. And let me share my screen. I think this is, okay, share this one. Okay. Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yes.
Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes, we can see your PowerPoint. It's not in presentation mode, but we can see the PowerPoint.
Okay, I shared the wrong one. Okay, new share, this one. This one's the one I need to share. Okay. So yeah, do you see the PowerPoint now?
Yep, that looks great.
Okay, so Superwomen in 2005, I thought of creating this magazine. And I'm gonna walk you through a little bit of a historical perspective just to get the table started. So as Allison had kindly spoke about, I started off artist, and that's like earlier 1995, but let's go further down the history to 2002. So in 2002, I had this vision that a rapper or hip hop artist was going to become a billionaire. Well, it happened last year. That was Jay-Z. But I had this campaign called Who Was Going to Be Rap's First Billionaire? And that is like the origins of the Hustlenomics way. And to speak about the Hustlenomics way, it's really the entrepreneurial way you overcome systemic challenges to barriers to fulfilling your life purpose with happiness. So 2002, we had a flyer. Who will be rap's first billionaire? 2003, I go on tour with 50 Cent, Jay-Z, and Beyonce, and put a magazine out in print, right? Owners Illustrated. 2005, which is a core of what we're talking about today, I'm like, you cannot talk about hip hop and entrepreneurship without women. First of all, Sylvia Robinson created the first label that commercialized the Sugar Hill Gang. And that's a woman that took the culture from the parks, put it on a global stage. And I'm like, there's so many powerful women. If I wanted to do business with 50, I went through Lori Dobbins and Violator. So I'm like, we need to tell the story of the women. And it wasn't popular at that time. It wasn't a movement. It wasn't a Me Too. It was just a different culture, a different environment 16 years ago. So I put a lot into doing the women's issue. Then 2007, I'm like, how about tech, cars, gadgets, video games? I wanted to do that. And that got my son on his pathway to getting a Carnegie Mellon because he was inspired to create his own technology products in integrating sustainability into it. 2019, we started building textbooks now to do our Toy STEAM program. And last year I launched our entrepreneurship textbook based on the work I've done covering 50 Cent, as you can see, over 19 years. So that's the what Hustlenomics Way is. But why Hustlenomics Way, and why are these superwomen and their stories so critical? So I want to share 2 videos with you about future superwomen and why what we're doing with our work is taking all this knowledge and putting it into a program. This is what Toys Electronics is doing now, creating a platform, creating resources, creating tools, creating inspiration for the next generation.
Are the new generation of makers. You can make things at home.
And now that's the young
Okay, so go ahead.
So we're able to work with young women from elementary school. And now here's how that carries over. In the video that I was showing the Girl Scouts, here are some young women who were studying behavioral science at CMU. They're not CS majors, but we were doing hackathons to show them how you could use Unity, Android Studio to create games. And here's a cool product. Here's some cool things these young superwomen were doing.
There it is.
Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah. So we made an app that was inspired by making an app for this watch specifically. And so this is the basic framework of our game. So it's just like a simple game. So there are a stream of platforms that come past the ball, and the ball basically has to move to the different platforms to gain points. And so with the watch, we would be able to move the ball using wrist movement, or possibly the using your finger. And
yeah, we wanted to add more advanced levels. So we would have blocks that would that are red that would end the game, or if you touch it, obstacles. And we also wanted to have turning, so you can go around corners.
Yeah, so when you move your wrist, it would be just pretty fun to just yeah.
So this idea.
Now, their game was actually on a smartwatch while they was developing on campus. And that kind of leads to the superwomen at the Schwartz Center for Entrepreneurship, who have been very helpful. I want to thank Allison, Sonia, Melanie, and Kit, and congratulations to Kit, who's now Assistant Dean for Entrepreneurship. And Wale worked a lot with Kit at Project Olympus, which is an exceptional incubator. So what we were doing was trying to build this ecosystem of diverse developers. And their game actually now is something that we show off on the watch. And recently, I worked with Melanie to do an I-Core research on if increase in diversity would help the talent pool shortage that is in the tech field. And I have a Superwoman mentor, Mary Dale Brady, who's a serial entrepreneur, incredible advisor, and has helped me really flesh through and validate a lot of the concepts of what we've been trying to achieve, which now brings us to, so I've gone through the what, the why, and now let's get to the who are these incredible superwomen and telling you about their story. So Alicia Keys would have been like a prototypical person we would have wanted with Toy Steam, because Alicia Keys is somebody who as a teenager had incredible talent. Not only was she incredibly gifted, she was able to enroll in Columbia University, an Ivy League school at 16, while also getting a record deal. Now, she had gotten her first record deal with Sony Music. However, she faced a ton of obstacles. She was not allowed to fulfill her vision. They wanted her to basically be like other artists of the day. Well, do R&B this way. And she did not like that because it wasn't authentic to herself. There were people telling her, well, what do you know? You're young, or, you know, you're a woman. And she had to get out of that deal. So what she did was get her own equipment and record her album outside of the purview of the record label. She had to now take her own agency and create her own content. And that's why and in my interview with her, here's some key points that she mentioned. I've always produced my own records and always written my own records and always executive produced my own album and always been kind of my own vision from the beginning to end. So she always took that agency. And that's from her being a teenager raised by a single mom. She was able to always say, this is what I want, and be secure in herself to be able to communicate that art. And as she also said, I've come more into my own and my experience and the confidence that she's able to build and the awareness and all these experiences of what she's learned in the past. But at the end of the day, she's able to realize her humanity. And that fact is, nobody is perfect. So there are good days, there are bad days, but as long as you give that concerted effort, you always have a chance to make that difference. Now, that album she was working on wound up selling over 12 million copies, winning 5 Grammys, and the rest is history. But none of that would have been possible if she did not take her own agency and exude herself as the superwoman that she is. I also interviewed Mark Zuckerberg's sister, Randi Zuckerberg, who is an incredible superwoman, who is a media dynamo, but she was able to step in for her younger brother and help him get Facebook off the ground. So she worked media for Facebook, worked media partnerships, and from there, she was able to take the risk of saying, well, you know what, my brother has now created this incredible multi-billion-dollar company, and we're at the Schwartz Center. Jim Schwartz took Facebook public with Aisel, and for us, Peter Thiel, who brought Wale to Silicon Valley when he was 15 prior to coming to Carnegie Mellon, was the first investor in Facebook. And she had actually had a chance to speak to my son. So family is a key point for her too. So she always looks at things from, okay, my perspective as a mother, a wife, family, helping my brother. How can technology improve our lives for busy parents and family? And also one thing that was key was how she had to start out for herself, take the risk, and work extra hard for herself to start up her own media company. Now, Mona Scott Young is one of the most incredible women. Superwomen, and she's also in hip hop, management, film, video. If you've heard an artist called Cardi B, she created Love and Hip Hop that introduced Cardi B to the world. She was also one of 50 Cent's managers, also is Missy Elliott's manager, also is Busta Rhymes' manager. And there's critical things she said that also speaks to her growth intelligence. She got into artist management first managing record producers. And it wasn't like there was a textbook of how do you become a manager. So it was trial and error. But she always recognized that she had a skill. And another thing that I said about growth intelligence is she was always able to listen to the artists and figure out, well, your artists want to go into these industries. Even if you don't have a relationship there, how do you break through? How do you develop? How do you create these new platforms? And that's how she was able to create Love and Hip Hop that brings people Cardi B. That's how she was able to get Missy Elliott in the films, Busta Rhymes in the films. But beyond it all, she said that her home, her family life, the work-life balance is critical to her success. And that's a key quote that I pulled out of my interview with her. If she's not feeling right and feeling healthy and feeling good, then it's hard for her to be able to be her best self. So taking that time out to recharge. You could be a superwoman. I'm not gonna like, you could be super, but you also have to do self-care so that you could be your best self at all times. Now, Judy Brunson is another superwoman that I had the pleasure of interviewing. I actually drove 14 hours to Auburn Hills to interview her because she's a Black woman, one of the most senior Black women in the automotive industry. She has over 6 patents. She was at Daimler-Benz for over 20 years. She's now VP of Quality at Cummins. And she spoke about the rarity of who she is in the industry, but also how she's opening up pathways for people like her. So if you look at the quotes I pulled out of the interview, she said, being a female in the automotive industry is sort of unique in itself, and being a Black female is more unique. And as I said, it's a huge rarity. I mean, I might count maybe a handful of Black women executives that are in her position. And as she said, the key is to take advantage of the opportunities when they present themselves. And again, she also speaks about there's qualified Black females that are in STEM, which also gets back to the why, what I said in the beginning. You need to be able to show representation so that people, and then also open up the tools so that people can see a pathway. And that's some of what she spoke about, that the industry needs to do a better job of attracting people into the industry. That you have to be able to present these talented, gifted superwomen the opportunities and have them see that how they could have fulfilling lives and careers in this pathway. Now, Sylvia Rhone's story is one that I still marvel at to this day. She graduated from Wharton, and in 1974, started out as a secretary. She's now currently the chairman and CEO of Epic Records. She is one of the most senior women in the music industry, period. And starting out as a secretary with a degree that doesn't even match where you're in, but working her way up a very long ladder, like she said, having the work ethic, having the passion, having the focus, having the ingenuity, having the innovation, having the wisdom, navigating so many minefields to wind up at the top and having the longevity. Literally, her career is older than I am, and she's still there. And one thing that I drew out of the interview that I had to pull out here was A decade ago, she was saying like, no, all of these things are going to change. CDs are going to be obsolete. We have to now start looking at online. We now have to start looking at digital. And I'm like, how do you get it? How do you have the insight? How are you able to see trends before they happen? How are you able to still keep up with the times and still do it to this very day today? So Sylvia Rhone is another superwoman that I was so honored to have interviewed. And then Pam Fletcher is the VP of Innovation of General Motors. And General Motors is now allocating, I think, $35 billion for electrification. I met her while she was in charge of the electrical drive of GM a decade ago. And she's worked her way up as an engineer all the way now to like the future GM literally lies in her hands. And she has the pleasure of working under Mary, a female CEO of General Motors. And here are some of the interesting things I learned from Pam. It's like, first of all, about product. You offer things to people they didn't know. So you're offering a value proposition, especially when you're talking about electrification. And it's like this guided discovery where the customer finds out that this is really what they want. But for her, it started out with loving cars at a very young age, which is why, going back to what I said in the beginning, introducing people to the possibilities. So at a young age, she had this vision of coming into an industry where women don't have a lot of opportunities, but she had a love for it and kept pursuing it. And that's part of what this third quote talks about, pursuing your interest. You have to start off with what you love and then figuring out the avenues and then pursuing it with passion. And another superwoman is Fairuz Jain. She's actually an Arab American automotive designer, worked for Ford, worked for Fisker, worked for Karma, and now she has her own firm. So she's done huge work in design. She is the quintessential toys maker. But what was key in her story was how early she began and her hard work and how she had to break barriers. So she talks about that. She became #1 in her class. She was a good student. She made sacrifices. And she started looking out to building her portfolio while she was still in high school. This is something that she loved and she pursued. So the key is, how do you provide more opportunities for superwomen of the future so that they could also pursue and they could also be like Fairuz Jain? And the key thing she said was, while in high school, she spent nights dedicated to her craft, building her portfolio, and then earning the scholarships for her to go to the very selective Center for Creative Studies in Detroit. And now, after all of these incredible superwomen, I also want to talk about what me and another superwoman in her own right, Dr. Victoria Manley, and I are doing. And what we're building is a diversity and inclusion product that features creative storytelling. What you've seen right here is, I've been a storyteller for over 20-something years. And in hearing the stories, it makes the numbers make sense. In hearing the stories, you understand better of how you're going to deal with the customers. In hearing each other's stories, you create an inclusive, collaborative, innovative work environment. So we have a data-driven, innovative, workforce collaborative product, a diversity and inclusion product, part of Toy Steam, that's able to synthesize a lot of this wisdom into a 4 to 6 week project-based course for your organization to collaborate with each other and unlock potential. And I'm sharing the slides so you could reach out to us to consult and test out our pilot. And we're giving a special rate on this pilot. And you could also reach me, thanks to, as I said in the beginning, the Superwomen that work at the Schwartz Center. And here I was last year. So maybe next year, I'll be able to do my Connects talk in person. But here I was last year giving the talk. Here is my email. I'm always available on LinkedIn. Here's our sites. And again, thank all of you for spending this afternoon with me. And I'm open for questions.
Thanks, Damola. Do we have any questions from anybody?
Looks like there's a question from Nicholas.
Yes. Oh, where's the question?
I'm sorry. Hey Damola, it's Nick. How's it going?
Hey Nick, how you doing, Nick? I'm so glad you're able to catch up and make the call too.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you. I actually was using the clap thing, but I actually have a question. So one thing that I'm wondering is, you talk about a lot of these women who started so young, right, in what they were doing. I'm curious as to how you're thinking about supporting that. You have your programs and stuff, but what are other ways that you're thinking about supporting that, especially for those people who may not actually have access to the courses that you're providing in person? Are you thinking about things that are kind of reach people in a further out way?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of why we collaborated with BNY Mellon and Women in Tech Pittsburgh and Red Chair Pittsburgh and the Girl Scouts. A lot of the efforts, and I have a passion for, is like children and providing representation. And that's why I was so excited to give this Superwomen talk, to show that there is validation of exposure at a younger age, providing tools, providing inspiration, and providing resources. So what we're trying to do is to see if there's a way to integrate some of these into the curriculum and into what is being offered in schools. And that's been some of the pilots, and that's been some of the work we're doing of developing this curriculum and developing ways that we could train other people to facilitate it. So like this wealth of knowledge could be disseminated in other people, so it's a movement. Because I'm just one person, but it's more effective if people could adopt these lessons and have access to this audio or this content or this curriculum, and then make it more widely available, and then train trainers. So we're working with organizations like We Make Learning, and we would love to do things with places like the Pittsburgh Public Schools to see how do you get women into STEM. And I showed about basically into STEAM. And a lot of the women I featured are basically toys makers. They have STEAM backgrounds. And how do we make their stories amplified, which is part of what this talk is. But then how do you look at what was some of these great things that they were able to do? What were some of the tools they did? What were some of the ways they went about it? And then how do you make that easier for more diverse, disadvantaged students to be able to get access to? And that's sort of what we're looking at. So kids that don't have that, how do you now make it accessible to the teachers and to the school systems they're interacting with, so that now more students could be inspired and utilize a lot of this wisdom of these superwomen so that they could also be superwomen too?
Thanks, Damola. Do we have any other questions? Okay. Not seeing any other questions at this time. Do you have anything else, Damola, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of then would want to show people like some of what we're saying. So for example, let me share, see if I could actually share a video of what we did at the Schwartz Center. And this storytelling thing, let me do a new share, screen share. 2 workshops we're going to be doing. This current workshop is actually one of 2 workshops we're going to be doing today. This first workshop is asset creation. The next workshop is going to be 3D animation and 3D modeling, and it's with a different set of students. But what they're doing now is writing their own stories, creating their own art, creating their own digital assets, and we're going to teach the students how to integrate these digital assets into a virtual reality game.
And he doesn't see it.
So what did you make this weapon do?
So what we were thinking was like a villain in the story, like kind of created that a long time ago, and he like stole it from him, kind of thinking he was like a villain, but it turns out it was just like a okay guy. But now he wants his sword back, so he's trying to get it back. And he didn't know, but now that guy's a bad guy.
So what we have here is where the students are going to record an audio. This is a HyperX. It's really like the HyperX Content Creator Studio. You could actually set this up in your home. So we have the HyperX keyboard, HyperX mouse, HyperX gaming pad, and we use an Audacity. So then the students, what we're going to do then, after they record their stories, is export out their stories, put it on the USB, and then integrate that into the virtual reality game, along with the visual art that they're creating. You create your own backstory, your own character, and our goal is to teach you how you could create your own world. Because a fun fact about this story was I started creating The Great Deity Da. I commercialized The Great Deity Da when I was 19. So that's when I was able to put it on vinyl in 96 and distribute it around the world. But nobody told me how to do it. I just had this idea of this character, created the character and created music, and I didn't use my face. I was like, I didn't want people to see my face, I just wanted them to see the character and hear the character. So now we're able to teach students like you how you could create your own universe and create your own characters. Using software like Audacity is free to download. So when you record your audio, it's something you could download at home. A microphone, there are $100 microphones you could get to record, and then you could play around with music and basically write your own animated stories and create your own characters. So I showed that video, and then I'll show the course. But the whole point of what we're doing now, which is actually piggybacking off of what Nicholas had asked, is giving the next generation the tools to be able to tell their own stories and be able to feel the confidence. Like I just think of Alicia Keys did not get supported at Columbia Records. And luckily she was able to get a chance meeting with Clive Davis. But how many Alicia Keys are there who are talented and can't meet like the music mogul and feel discouraged that their art or their creativity or what's in their minds cannot be displayed to the world? So that's sort of like so that's why I tell this story today. That's why I feature these superwomen. And it's why we're thinking of how do you create more ways to provide an inclusive environment that could empower the next generation of superwomen so that it's not a rarity, but it becomes commonplace to see people. And I'll also show a little bit about what we're doing, me and Dr. Mattingly is doing. And I'm gonna do a share right now of that screen. So part of what we're doing too is looking at, and she has a background with a PhD in organizational psychology. But what we wanted to do is see like, well, how do you build creative storytelling where everybody is a superhero? And that's around this concept I created called superhero rap, where it's like idealism. Idealism is your ideal self and the ideal world. Your villain is your obstacles, and you use STEM concepts to develop your superpowers or how you overcome your obstacles. So in the process, people learn growth intelligence and problem solving skills. And we feel like this could be very, very effective in organizations, especially on building collaboration, a better way of attracting diversity, equity, and inclusion that involves everybody, so that you hear everybody's story. Like, just like I told each of these women's stories, every one of you on the call has a story. Every one of you has something that you've overcome. Every one of you has a story of how you got to where you are now. And within the framework of your organization, at work, with your coworkers, family, friends, it would be great to have tools where you could share it. And then people could find out things about you they didn't know that may make for better bonding. So some of the things we do is teach, and people are able to interact, and they're able to have takeaways, whether it's a 3D modeled superhero character, like we think of Wonder Woman. Imagine having at your desk your own 3D supermodel, or be able to listen to a podcast that you create with your coworkers, and then everybody's story is included. So everybody's able to share, and everybody is able to feel heard, and not only heard, but empowered to bring your best self to work every day. And so this is me and Dr. Victoria Mattingly, and a lot of what we do is team-based. It's 6 weeks. It's inclusive design. You get assets you could use. And it's like, how do you become a superhero? How could everybody become superheroes? And I always feel like there's no age limit, there's no time limit. Like what I talked about, Sylvia Rhone, she's still ahead of the curve. And it's not even youth either, because as I mentioned with Alicia Keys, she created a groundbreaking album while she was 16, going to Columbia and doing art. So there's no ageism, there's no genderism, there's no sexuality, there's no barrier. If we include everybody, we can maximize everybody's potential. So I'm gonna stop that share, and I don't know if Victoria or what Dr. Madeline would want to share anything herself.
Yeah, thanks, Damola. And happy Women's History Month to everyone. It's International Women's Day on Monday, which is super exciting. And, in the diversity, equity, inclusion space, there's a lot of training on unconscious bias and essentially what we're doing wrong when it comes to making others in the workplace feel valued, respected, seen, and heard. And so what Damola and I are trying to do, expounding what I was talking about with empowerment and, how do we bring our best selves to work every day and bring our best assets we have as individuals to our team, really capitalize on the power of diversity that we know is, scientifically proven. More diverse teams are more innovative teams. They make better decisions. They have better communication. And so how do we capitalize on that? By taking a positive approach and using storytelling to really, empower individuals to bring their best selves into the team, into the organization, and focus on what we could be doing right, as opposed to all this emphasis on what we're doing wrong. And so, as a female business owner, I was just super excited to be here for this talk. The work I'm doing with Damola is just really phenomenal. And yeah, just anyone on this call, regardless of what gender you identify as, I think we could all use a little more empowerment in our lives right now with the way the world's currently standing, and just continue to think of ways how you can both empower yourself and empower those around you to do good work and bring your best selves into your courses, into the field every day. So that's all I had to say.
No, thanks so much. And I mean, if anyone has any other questions, but what has been impactful for me beyond doing the story of these superwomen was also working with these young superwomen that are on campus. And I have a story of, so I told the story of the two young women. Well, she actually was pledging her sorority that weekend. And she was so enamored by having an opportunity to develop a game for a watch that she brought her sorority sisters along with her, right? She is a behavioral science student, and the openness of giving people tools and giving opportunity and creating a safe environment for everybody to be able to collaborate, she was able to bring her sorority sisters, and they came up with a brilliant game. And it was able to enhance her academic pathways. Like Carnegie Mellon has this program called ID8 that's collaborative of different departments. And Wale got 2 minors there. He got a minor from ID8 along with his ECE minor. But it's one of the great things about being able to collaborate the Schwartz Center with Entertainment Technology Center, with the music and art, with engineering, and having students be able to do that. So in our events on campus, we try to synthesize that and break down the barriers. And in a lot of what we're doing now personally, for me and what Nicholas said, is like expanding access. So I'm looking at how do you bring historical Black colleges into the conversation of having access to some of the great things going on in Carnegie Mellon? How do you bring community colleges to have access? How do you bring tools so that places like Pittsburgh Public Schools or the Boys and Girls Club or after school programs like Assemble could have access, so the young girls, young women could have tools to be able to pathway to be their own superwomen in the future? How do you break down barriers? I mean, I cannot speak for women. I would not speak for women, but I feel like I could honor and I could give deference and I could listen and I could try my best. And, you know, I feel as a man, we falter all day. We always are going to make mistakes. But having your heart in the right place, there's always a role to play. There's always a way you could uplift women. There's always a way you could open doors. And I show that through example. It's like, okay, yeah, you're doing underground hip hop. I'm like, yeah, but having the right spirit allows Girl Scouts to be able to feel creative. Having the right spirit allows young women who are doing classical music to now do hip hop jazz fusion and use this album we did on campus to get a select conservatorship in England because of the work we did by including everybody, by always opening the door, opening up the platform, providing the resource, and boosting voices and giving that spirit and that nudge and telling the stories and letting everybody know that everybody could be a superhero and everybody could bring their best selves. So everybody has a story, and how do we include everybody? And part of the course we use is this song, Stop the Bullying, which talks more about that inclusivity. And it's and it's like, that's the basis of this DEI work I'm doing with Dr. Mattingly. And I'll put that in the chat, but so I'm a songwriter, but then here's where you can see it and you can listen to it. But a key thing is also the lyrics and the students. And here are CMU students, diverse CMU students, and we're able to collaborate. And I'm able to take things I've done over 25 years, things that helped my son get to Carnegie Mellon at 15 and graduate at 20, which is a rarity in itself. So you have all these best practices with these great minds, including working with Nicholas, a very great mind, that we're now democratizing and making sure that as many people as possible, especially what's going on now, I have faith, I have hope, and I'm inspired by the opportunity to present and engage people on a positive, solution-driven way of how do we make a more inclusive, equitable. When I talk to people, I'm like, no, I'm thinking 2025. I'm thinking 2030. I'm thinking 2035. What would America look like? And how are we preparing for that? It's not social media instant. It's work, and it's making sure everybody feels comfortable. And like Sylvia Rhone and like Mona Scott had said, making sure everybody has their best selves and they're together and in an encouraging, nurturing, self-care environment so that everybody's able to maximize their potential. So I don't know if anybody else has any questions, but this has been an honor to have your time this afternoon, and especially to be able to talk to you about all these things during Women History Month.
Great. Thank you, Damola, for doing this. This is great. Do we have any other questions today? Okay. Well, if we don't have any questions, I will let everybody get back a little bit of their day. And thanks, Damola, for doing this. And I'll see everybody out in the next Connects. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's been such a pleasure and such an honor.